Correct. I mean, I was raised in a country community in New Zealand. And so we all hear that adage. I probably won't get it right, but the child is raised by the village. And in my case, I was taught by, the community how to, respect the land, respect your elders, respect people's opinion. And it was a great environment to grow up in. But that was a small microcosm of the bigger, as you said, the global community. And so you are in Ontario and I'm down in Florida, but we are all part of the bigger world. And so we've got to start realizing that we are of that global community, and what can we do to support it? Because it's going to affect us if we don't husband it. We don't support it. So yes, I fully agree with you there, Dave, that it is very important to look upon things globally, not sort of in an insulated focus of where we perhaps live.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have someone joining me today here on the podcast, and we share a similar name, which is great. But he has done travels that I have not done, and I'm living vicariously through his journey. And he's got a great mission as well, tied to why he's writing and why he's an author. And you can help support and save a life by buying his books, which is great. David Mark Quigley is here on the podcast on Living the Next Chapter. David, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, David. I greatly appreciate it.
It's amazing. So let everybody know where you are in this great big world of ours as we're recording today.
Okay, I live in Southwest Florida, but originally I'm from New Zealand. So I grew up in New Zealand, and I ended up leaving New Zealand in about, I think it was 1996. So I've been away for a reasonable amount of time, but it's still a place that's pretty dear to my heart.
Excellent. Yeah, I've met amazing people in that part of the world, and they never fail to impress me. They're beautiful people there. So excellent. I'm glad to hear that, because when people hear your amazing accent, which I don't have an accent by any means in Canada. I have zero accent here in Canada. But when they hear your accent and they go Florida and that, there's a story there, which I love. So that's good.
Yeah,
it's great.
For sure.
So your background, David, you've been writing for a while now, but your story of how you got from where you started to where you are now, you've done some pretty amazing things and worked through some pretty amazing things that maybe would make some people go, I don't think I could do this. I couldn't be an author. I couldn't share my story. You've worked through some of those things. Take us back in time a little bit and explain to the audience that are listening, meeting you for the first time, a little bit about some of the things you've had to work through to get to where you are today.
Okay, well, thank you. So I, from a very early age, I had a blunt force trauma event to the left side of my head. And I, even though I was predisposed to having dyslexia, it basically precipitated that to express itself. So as a child, and even still today, I suffer from severe dyslexia. And so my issues were I could not, and even today I still cannot, break up words into syllables. So I can't, phonologically, I can't break up those small little phonemes, the little syllable sections of words, so I can understand them. And so one portion of my brain malfunctioned, and then also another area, the visual component of my brain from the occipital temporal region also prevented me from recognizing words from a visual standpoint. So all through my schooling, I struggled severely. And so I've never passed an English test in my life, and I didn't read my first book until I was 23 years of age. And so I shied away. As soon as I left school, I shied away from anything academic at all. And I was destined to basically probably use my hands work on the land or do some type of manual labor. But it wasn't until I got back from overseas after traveling extensively there that I realized, no, I want to tackle this issue head on. And so I ended up studying for and getting my diploma in clinical hypnotherapy and establishing a peak performance consultancy. And so while I saw some incredible results with my clients with the use of the subconscious mind, it wasn't until I made the decision and I applied myself to write my first book that I started making real gains to overcoming dyslexia. And so it was that action that was a massive change for me. So reading that first book, it was I'd been in Africa. I was actually in London. I was traveling to Leamington Spa on a train. It's going to be a 2.5-hour journey, and I spied this book out of the corner of my eye, and it had a lion on it. And I just arrived back from Africa. I felt still connected there. And I'd had a bit of an event with a lion while I was there, and so I resonated towards it, and it was a book called When the Lion Feeds by Wilbur Smith. And so it was an excruciatingly long process to read it, but it opened my eyes to a whole new world. And then fast forward to my consultancy and then starting to write my book, when I started going through some processes, some remarkable things started happening with my brain, and I was able to start rewiring it through neuroplasticity and repair some of those pathways. And so while the first book, Scars of the Leopard, was written originally to get over dyslexia because I couldn't spell to save myself, but through certain techniques and certain subconscious triggers, I was then able to start really applying myself to the written word and understanding it. And it was while I was writing that I realized I like this. I love it. And so I've continued on since then. And I think I'm into my seventh book at the moment.
Wow. So so go from not reading to being an author. That's a journey in itself right there. For those that don't really understand dyslexia or haven't experienced any of that in their family at all with any of their relatives, can you give us some other things that kind of identify with dyslexia? Like how else can we understand it?
Okay, so for me, I can't break up words into syllables. But for other people, sometimes numbers and words are reversed. And so it's really to do with the ability to phonetically break up those words or visually identify words. And so those are the main things. So it is a neurobiological issue. However, you can start overcoming it because it's on the left side of the brain, the logical side of the brain. But a lot of dyslexics are very right side brain. So they've got good spatial reasoning. And I actually believe that entrepreneurs, there is a huge percentage of entrepreneurs that are dyslexic because they've taught themselves to think outside the box. And so really it's to do with the dyslexia is to do with the way that you grasp the written word.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that helps to give some context as well for people. But that must have been so excruciating to be reading that book for the first time and having to kind of soldier through and do the work to learn the words and be able to work on all of that. Had you not seen that book, we might not be having this conversation, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. So now you're into writing as well. And what I love is you're writing stories that are also then be able to take the proceeds of your sales and do something amazing with that. First, I'd love to kind of know more about your animal advocacy and your background and where all this comes from. You mentioned a story about a lion. I'm very curious about that story in particular, but why do you have this affinity and love for these amazing creatures and animals around the world?
Okay, so for me, the lion event, it was when I was in Botswana. I was in the Chobe National Park, and I was in eastern Chobe in the Zanin area, and I was with a group of people. We had driven around this on this dirt track, and we came into this veld where there was a full-grown maned lion following a lioness in heat. And so we stopped to watch this lion. As soon as the lion realized that we were there, it turned around and it just charged at the Land Rover. The person who was driving it put it into reverse and was reversing backwards as quickly as he could. I was on the great game viewing hatch with two other individuals. They scampered through the game viewing hatch and actually locked it behind them, left me up on the game viewing platform. So this massive lion is coming, galloping towards us. And it was as if we were just standing still, even though the driver was going back as fast as he could. But this thing just came at us and it smashed into the grille of a Land Rover. I was up there on the game viewing roof, and it was an incredible feeling. I felt no fear. I felt so incredibly focused on just capturing a photograph of this one lion, which I did. I got the photograph of a lifetime. But it was at that time, because I suppose, got into the zone and I experienced a feeling that I'd never felt before, that I felt an affinity for that whole area. It is one of the pivotal moments of my life. And from that moment on, my life was changed. And so I attribute that one experience to a lot of what I write about, because I now write about endangered species and the preservation of them. And so I had written 4 books, and I decided that I would form a registered nonprofit to support wildlife conservation. And so a percentage of my royalties goes to the Quigley Wildlife Foundation, and we donate to wildlife causes around the world. And so a lot of people who read my types of books, or who even like action adventure and those type of things, do have an affinity to the wild places and to wildlife. And a lot of them don't know how to effectively donate to the wilderness or the preservation of it or the wildlife. And so just by reading one of my books, we are going to do it for you. We're going to take a portion of that book sale and to donate it to wildlife conservation.
Amazing. Have you been able to see the results of these great donations and support from your readers in real life? Have you been able to walk the grounds and see the impact?
No, I haven't been able to walk the ground, but I've been in touch with the people that I've donated. For example, we just recently donated to the Tiki Haywood Foundation in Zimbabwe. Lisa is very involved with the preservation of pangolins, the most trafficked mammal in the world. And so the last donation that we have given to her is going for tracking of rewilded pangolins back into the wild. So she can track those animals that she has helped bring back from the brink and rewilded back into the wilds.
That has to be rewarding to see the money go to something specific and be used in a great way and help. in the process. That's got to be a rewarding experience for you as an author, but also someone who's passionate about animal welfare.
Yes, correct. It is very heartening to be able to do something like that.
Amazing. Now, for the readers that are listening to the podcast, tell us more about the big picture of your books. This isn't a book specific to a species of animal and you're a textbook. This is by far nothing like that. Tell us about what the context of your books are so that we can all fall in love with what you're writing.
Okay, so basically what I do is I have what is called the African series. And so, for example, book 1 is about it was actually a real conservation effort that was undertaken in the 1980s in the Zambezi Valley. It was called Operation Stronghold, to help save and relocate the black rhinos from the Zambezi Valley, which is along the Zambezi River, which is across the river was Zambia, where a lot of the poachers came from. So that first book, The Last Rhino, was a real program, and some of the characters within it were pivotal within that actual program. And I've actually put the e-book on Amazon for free, so people can actually just download it for free and they can get a taste of how I write. And so, well, it's actually free on Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. So to start getting a taste of who I am, you can actually just download that for free. The next one of the series is about ivory poaching. The next one is about lion poaching. And the next one is about the pangolins, which I haven't actually published yet. And the one that I'm working on at the moment is about the southern white rhino. So I generally take a species and I craft a story around it.
Wow. Okay. From your travels and from your experience, what, in addition to your story about the lion, what other animals have really captured your attention, have really made you stand in awe? What is it about those animals? And can I give us some more stories around that too?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, we're all fascinated by lions. We're all fascinated by elephants. We're all fascinated by rhinos. But it's some of the other lesser-known species, like the pangolin. There's 8 species of pangolins throughout the world. 4 are in Asia. 4 are down in Africa. And, they are critical to the environment of those areas that they live in. They're insectivores, and so if they are forced into extinction, there is going to be an imbalance with the environment that they came from, which is eventually going to have a knock-on effect to man. So even though it's a pangolin is known as a scaly anteater, and even if that innocuous-looking creature passes from existence, it may not be noticed, but we're going to feel the effect. We just are. Yeah. And so it doesn't have to be some of these bigger keystone species like the elephant or the rhino or what have you, but it could be some of those smaller species. I mean, we've all heard the stories about, the honeybee. If we lost those, what is the knock-on effect going to be for man? So again, it's not, it is, by supporting these species, we're actually supporting ourselves.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about the feedback that you've had on your work. When you hear back from a reader, what kind of things have really spoken to you as far as some feedback on your work?
Well, it's not just the feedback about the wildlife conservation. It's also the feedback about, wow, you overcame dyslexia and you've written. And so I get quite a bit of feedback about both, really, I suppose. But from a dyslexic point of view, the way that I tackled it and the way I approached learning how to write, learning how to spell, those sort of things, I had a great advantage because I compensated from the right hemisphere of my brain. But as I went through the challenges and I strengthened certain areas like the hippocampus, where I started remembering more effectively using rote learning, some of those neural pathways were improved, and I repaired some of those left side of the brain areas, like the occipital temporal lobe. And so, occipital temporal area, sorry. And so, but the right side didn't diminish. So I still had that superior right side compensation, but I had improved left side brain activity as well. So it was like, it gave me a huge step up. And one of the things, and a lot of us have heard about dropping into flow, getting into flow and being able to work in the zone. That's exactly what working on my dyslexia allowed me to do. When I write, hours can go by. And because I've got into the flow and I write from a right brain perspective, the self-awareness, the self-cognitive functions drop off, and I'm able to write from an intuitive point of view where I can string together some pretty unique stories and sentences. So some of the feedback is from people who suffered from dyslexia and realized that, no, great things can be done, because I look upon it as probably my greatest gift now, rather than as a constraint. And then, of course, now supporting wildlife, that heartens people as well.
It's amazing. So I'm thinking, David, as we're talking, there's an author who wants to write, maybe struggling in this area, trying to find some tools and some way of working through their dyslexia. And here you are as an example of what can happen. I would love for you to talk to them as they're working through this on their own. You've talked about how you have personally done it, but just the encouragement to an author that maybe is facing this. What would you say to them?
Well, they can find me on my website, and I'm happy to converse and take a personal approach. But the main thing, one of the things that I do religiously, David, is I use subconscious triggers. And so a simple subconscious trigger could be to ask a question and set it aside and don't try to consciously answer it. Allow the subconscious mind to give you the answer. I've been doing this since my mid to late 20s. Every evening, I'll write down in a journal a series of questions and allow those to be answered. Sometimes it may take a day, sometimes it may take a week, sometimes it may take a lot longer. But if you can trigger your subconscious mind to get it to work for you, it will reward you in spades. And so, and a lot of the other thing about it is just doing it. Start. Just take those simple steps, set some really clearly defined simple goals, and embark on it.
Now, I've seen you look over your shoulder at the stack of your books behind you on the desk, and there's got to be a proud moment as an author to have that book arrive in your hands for the first time and just know that you've met an objective that you set out for yourself. And for you, it's probably even a little more sweeter that you've been able to do this to this point. What does it feel like to have that book behind you and know that you're on the right path as an author?
Well, I liken it to being a builder. And so, because when you build something, I mean, I have built my own house, but when you build something from scratch, that's where you start. You start with nothing. You start with a bare plot of land. And so with planning and with effort, you finally put a structure together until one day it's finished. It's no different than with a book. You've got to start. And so once you start and you layer the one chapter on top of the other, you start building a book. And so you're building one thing on top of the other. And for me, because of the unique way that I write, sometimes I write some things and I don't even know where it's leading. And it's an adventure for me to find out what's going to come next, believe it or not. So I have a broad concept that I start with and I build from there, and I trust the process. And then at the end, you write that last sentence, it's like, good Lord. And, you pick up a book and it's like, oh, I wrote that, and it's an incredible, and it was a journey, and it was, and it was constructed from nothing. And so I brought to life like a living being thing for the period of time that it took me to write it. And what I do is I put that out and I allow that energy to go out to the reader. And that reader can take that energy that I put into that book and do with it what they like. Whether they want to laugh, they want to cry, or they want to donate to wildlife causes. But that energy that I put in, I'm giving to them so they can use it as they see or they feel fit. So yeah, I've built something and I've passed it on for somebody to do with it what they wish.
That has to be a rewarding and satisfying feeling to know that you're on the right path and you're making a difference through your books, but also how that money is also then reinvested. It's got to be rewarding for you.
Yeah, well, very much so. I'm so thankful for those. I'm so thankful for those readers, because without those readers who contributed to the royalties, I wouldn't have been able to pass it on. So it's not just me. I'm just a conduit. Right. I'm a conduit because I wrote the book, and then I'm a conduit because I'm just passing on what they decided to invest in.
It's amazing. I love it. So do you have an end in sight for your writing, or is this just going to keep continuing for you?
Well, I have a goal of having 25 books in the African series, but I've also been toying with the idea of doing a different series as well. Because what I like to do is I like to put into my books some of those tips on living a better life, because I've run a peak performance consultancy, because I've been involved in other types of businesses as well. So while it's an action adventure, I like to try and weave in some real nuggets that are going to help people live a more rewarding and enriching life.
Love it. And one thing I also pick up just talking to you, David, is the need for all of us to be more of a global citizen, not just focused on you're in Florida, I'm here in Ontario, Canada. We're far away from some of these beautiful animals who are in desperate need of help. And we become so inwardly focused. We're just focused on our world and what we're doing, not thinking about how we should represent ourselves on a global scale. How important is it for you to raise the plight of what's going on for some of these animals and these species around the world? It's important, right, to you? And I think you'd agree that being a global citizen is something that all of us should be more considerate about.
Correct. I mean, I was raised in a country community in New Zealand, and so we all hear that adage. I probably won't get it right, but the child is raised by the village. And in my case, I was taught by the community how to respect the land, respect your elders, respect people's opinion, and it was a great environment to grow up in. But that was a small microcosm of the bigger, as you said, the global community. And so well, you are in Ontario and I'm down in Florida, but we are all part of the bigger world. And so we've got to start realizing that we are of that global community, and what can we do to support it? Because, it's going to affect us if we don't husband it. We don't support it. So yes, I fully agree with you there, Dave, that it is very important to look upon things globally, not sort of in an insulated focus of where we perhaps live.
Wow. Well, I am very grateful for that lion who charged at the Land Rover that day, because that sparked all of this conversation we're having today. So thank you to that lion. That was well done, well timed. It's exciting to see where you're going with all this, David. And we're going to have links, obviously, to your website and to the books and the free book that everyone can download. That's an amazing gift. But as well, talk a little bit more about the charity. I'd like to kind of raise that awareness as well, because everything, the sales are helping to fund that. But talk just more about the charity in general. How can we be, in addition to buying the books, what else can we do to help support the charity that you've set up?
Okay, so the charity, I have a board of 5 directors. So I don't make the decision. It is a decision by 5 individuals where it's donated. So and the directors that I have are well traveled, and they're entrepreneurs in their own right, and so their opinions matter. So I can't bully anybody into making a decision. I want this to go here. It has to be agreed upon. And so that was a critical component of it when I set up. I didn't want people to think, well, he just donates where he wants to. And so that's very important as part of it. And so it gives a real purpose for my writing to know that while I've created something in my in a book that's going to go out in the world, it's also going to energize that foundation, the Wildlife Foundation, so it can do further good as well by donating to those wildlife causes. And so one of the main ways that that has been funded to date is through a portion of my royalties, but also there are links on my website, davidmarkquigley.com, that you can donate directly to the Wildlife Fund through PayPal. So that is another way of doing it. And I've got some pretty big goals of where I want to go personally in my writing career, but a lot of it is because of what I want to do with that foundation. So I want that recognition as a writer, and because of that recognition as a writer, it can then further the Wildlife Fund to actually donate far greater and bigger resources than just coming from my royalties. So that is a big hope of mine, is that as I further my writing career, I can further the reach and the impact that the Quigley Wildlife Foundation is going to have for wildlife conservation.
It's amazing. Awesome. Again, we're going to have links to all of this in the show notes so that everyone can come and support you. Get the books. The books, David, they're available everywhere as well, online to purchase?
Yes.
Okay. So we can go through our favorite retailer and we can find your books there. That's amazing. Any last words again, David, for new authors, people who are looking to find and share their story, maybe feeling a little overwhelmed that this is a big task to write a book, from someone who's done it, just some inspiration for someone who's on the path of starting their book? Any words that you can do to encourage another author?
Begin. Just begin. And, don't be afraid of triggering your subconscious mind, because you have a vast resource there that you probably haven't effectively used in the past. So begin the process and then just ask yourself questions and don't expect the answer, because the answer will come if you keep asking that question. If you can articulate a question, you already have the knowledge to have it answered.
Wise words. Wise words. Again, David, your website, can you please tell us again?
davidmarkquigley.com.
Excellent. Everyone will have all the information for you in the show notes. David, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for writing, sharing your story, and for your passion to help us all be better global citizens through your work. It's an amazing, inspirational story, and I'm really grateful you have time to be on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dave. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate those questions that you've asked. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Everyone, all the information is always in the show notes. Please go support an amazing author, and know that your purchase of these books are going to go help and protect some amazing creatures around the world. So, David, again, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow, helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.